Okay, Boker Tov, everybody. So, Raim Tovim in Israel. Welcome on behalf of Torah Motion, a continuing shir in Pirkei Avot. Today's shir is being sponsored by Barbara and Aubrey Abrams in memory of Aubrey's father, Shlomo Ben Chaim Natan, that happens to be who our oldest son is named for. Of course, the Abrams are my in-laws. So my grandfather-in-law, of course, who I never knew. And we should have a long life, as we say in South Africa, Minhag, wish everybody long life and good health, and then the Shema should have an aliyah, and we should come together for happy occasions, whether online, in person, and okay, so I'll be well. Okay, we're in the fourth chapter of Pirkei Avot. We were in the middle of Mishnah Yud, at least in my iteration of the Mishnah. Rabbi Meir, we're saying you should spend a lot of time in Torah, less time in business and more time studying Torah. Okay, and then, but we got up to, we explained, we ended last week, the word neged. You have betelim harbe kenegdecha, a person who doesn't get involved in Torah, mivatel Torah, he's got harbe keneged. So we explained the word neged in Hebrew has a dual meaning, which are opposites of each other. Alongside neged, keneged, he's next to me, and against me. And we explained that both are true. Ezer kenegdo, the spouse is with you together, but also has to serve as a critic. Or we said the sort of radical interpretation of the Tshuva Me'ava, Rav Elazar, the Flecklist, the top student, or one of the top students of the Nod Yehuda, and he succeeded him in the rabbinate in Prague. Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid. So we should see God as against us. In other words, we have to live our life as if there's no God, so to speak. Ein somchim al hanes. You can't, I rely on God. What do you mean you rely on God? You got to go to a doctor. You got to go work. Shivite Hashem lenegdi tamid. And also that if God gives you a reward, maybe it's taking away from something. It's sort of a negative approach. It's maybe very hard for us. But the idea that there's sort of an opposition, we should always, that will keep us on our toes a lot more. Okay, that's how we ended off last week. And then the Mishnah continues, Ima malta b'Torah. If amalta is a hard word to translate, if you were engaged, amal, worked really hard, you sweat, I would say. Amal to amelim b'Torah means you have to sweat and you have to work hard. We have a big reward to give you if you are amal b'Torah. So first of all, just interesting to point out that if well, this is, I guess, the main key point, and we say it every time we make a siyum on a tractate in Talmud. Anu amelim vehem amelim. We work hard, or we sweat, and they sweat. Means people are not engaged in Torah. Anu amelim u'makablim schar. We are amel, and we get reward. Hem amelim ve'enu makablim schar. And everybody asks, what does that mean? And the classic understanding is, of course, amelut means effort. In the Torah world, you get rewarded only for your effort. The results, I don't want to say are irrelevant. We'll get there in a moment. Results are out of our hand. We know that there's basically almost nothing in life that we can control 100%. I always tell that's the basis of staka, really, that your success is really only partially, yes, you may have worked hard and you may be bright and you did all the right things, but without being born into the right family and getting the educational opportunities and getting so many efforts and luck, you happen to be in some business in the pandemic. You're in the house, you own a house before the pandemic. So I don't know what it's like in New York, but housing prices here have literally gone through the roof. They've gone up over 30% in a year. I mean, young people are out of the market. So you lucked out. You became a multimillionaire overnight. So much of wealth is dependent on factors beyond our control. So what we call luck is really HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So in Judaism, we understand that all we can do is effort. So in the Torah world, we get reward for amelut. Our reward is for the effort. In the business world, it doesn't work that way. The bottom line is what counts. Okay, that's the way it works in the material world. That's one of the differences between the material and the spiritual world. But we have the concept of lepum tsara agra. So it's amelim b'Torah, imamalta b'Torah. Sometimes you work hard in Torah and you don't understand, and doesn't go so well. You spend 5 hours on a Tosfot and your understanding is wrong. So that's okay. We get reward for the effort. If you want to take it sort of in a slightly different angle, like Rav Soloveitchik explained, let's say Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai argue all the time. So maybe we shouldn't, why do we waste our time to study Beit Shammai? We all know we don't follow Beit Shammai, we follow Beit Hillel. So what do we waste our time understanding why Beit Shammai said what he says? No, that's That's not the fact that there's no practical ramification in a sense is not relevant. I don't say it's. I almost say it's totally relevant. Well, okay, we'll come there, but that doesn't really matter. What matters is the effort and what you're doing. So that's the first idea. Rav Avraham Hamchorsky, who of course unfortunately passed away this year of corona, one of the giants who we lost this year. So I actually heard them say this at an RCA convention, Rabbinical Council of America. I know one of the conventions I did attend, so he was one of the speakers. So he mentioned in the second parak of Pirkei Avot, it says, Rabbi, it's the same Mishnah as Yafet Talmud Torah im derech eretz, the idea that we should combine worldly knowledge and wisdom with Torah. So the Mishnah says, Kol ha'amelim, it's the same word, amelut, effort, imat tzibur, you amelim imam l'shem shemaim. When you work for the community, you have to work for the purpose of heaven. We say that every Shabbos morning. We bless people. And I've pointed this out before. We stress the word b'emunah and faith in the Shem Shemaim, because we explained this, I think, last year when we learned this Mishnah. When somebody, for those who were here, great, we'll do a review. For those who weren't, okay, it's new. It's always good to review. We explained that those who work, it's impossible in public service not to hurt people. You have to hurt people. You're a leader, so you make decisions. I always say, take a government budget. Please God, we'll have one in Israel soon. You have a government budget. You spend more on education. You have less for healthcare. You spend more in healthcare. You have less for the military. More for the military, less for arts. Whatever you do, there's not enough. You have to you're a principal of a school, so you have to do what's best for the school. You have to make all kinds of decisions that are going to hurt people. That's what it means to be a leader, and that's great. I mean, it's not great, but it's great that you make the decision that's for the benefit of the most people. So therefore, there's a stress for those who work for the tzibur, the Shem Shalom. Other people, it's not so important. Me and you individually, what I do in my private life, yes, of course you should do it for the sake of heaven, but it doesn't matter so much. But when you're working for the tzibur, when there's a public implication, so that's very interesting. So he says, Kol amelim im hatzibur. So it's the same word, amelim b'Torah. And then he said, then the Mishnah has a very weird sentence. Sheschut avotam misayatam, the merit of our forefathers. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, I guess, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, helps them. And their merit, their righteousness stands forever. What's the connection? What does that mean? What does that have to do with anything? You should work for the sake of heaven. You should put in tremendous effort. And if you do so, the merit of your ancestors will help you. So Rabbi Twersky explained that he says, take a look at our ancestors. Let's look at Avram Avinu. So it sounds almost, they won't teach you this in yeshiva. What was Abraham's, batting average? Abraham had how many children? Just if one wants to yell it out.
8.
8, right? Of course, 8. We know Yitzchak and Ishmael are the two famous ones, but then he married. The Torah tells us this, so it must be important. Wasn't important, wouldn't be in the Torah. That's always, it's if it's not in the Torah, it means if it's in a midrash, it means one thing. If it means in Torah, it means something else. So he had 8. He married Keturah, right? Doesn't say
his happy marriage.
I'm sorry?
That was his happy marriage.
Maybe that was in his old age. It says Avram Zakein, Baba Yimim, Vaberecha Tobakol, God bless him with everything, right? And then he lived for 38 years after Sarah died. So I don't know exactly at what point in that he was, Sarah was 127, he's 137, he's 10 years older, 190 when they had Yitzchak. So he lives to 175. So he lives for an extra, 38 years. So he's gonna, he's got married. That's the way it's supposed to be. And he had 6 kids. Had 6 kids when he got married. Mijan, Midan. So how many of those kids are Jew? How many of those kids followed in the path of Abraham? 1 out of 8. You wouldn't even make it on a baseball team. 1 out of 8. You're not even in the minor leagues. 125 batting average. No, let's go to Yitzchak. He didn't do much better. Esav, 50%. I don't know. People don't consider 50% on a test very, very good. So, and even Yaakov Avinu, and maybe we're called Bnei Yisrael because Yaakov Avinu, all his children stayed within the fold. But that, I don't know, I don't want to, sound so whatever flippant, but that wasn't necessarily all because of Yaakov. Maybe that was more because of Yosef. We know the famous midrash that Yaakov, when he blessed his children on his deathbed, so he was very nervous. What's who they're going to go off the path? I mean, during his lifetime, they went off the path. Shimon, Levi, Yehuda leaves the family. Everybody, they're not so ay ay ay. All his kids, and he doesn't give them all such a wonderful blessing. He curses some of them, and he's very nervous. And the kids say Shema Yisrael. Of course, Yisrael has a dual meaning, of course, for the Jewish people, but Yaakov's name, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, and that's the Medrash says again in the Midrash, not in the Torah. Baruch Shem Kvod Malchut Olam Va'ed, and that's our minhag, to say Baruch Shem Kvod Malchut Olam Va'ed. And the Gemara puzzles, why do we do? Well, we can't say it out loud because it's not written in the Torah, but Yaakov did say it, so we say it quietly. So in other words, even on his deathbed, Yaakov Avinu did not know if all his children would follow in the path. That's really through the efforts of Yosef, who reconciled the family. So Rabbi Twersky noted, you know what? So you're going to work in public life. So 87.5, if you're Avram Avinu, if you're as successful as Avram Avinu, 87.5% of the time you're going to fail. You're not going to get what you want. I think it's tough out there. It's a tough world. The opposition is mean and cruel and yelling, and people in the media. It's hard. It's hard. And many people don't act the Shem Shema. People want to stab you in the back. That's the way the world works, unfortunately. So that's okay. I mean, it's unfortunate, but your job is to put in the effort. How successful it be is irrelevant. Shchut avotam. Just think about it. Don't worry if you're not so successful. Avram wasn't so successful either. Yes, but the little success that he had is why we're here today. The little success he had was so unbelievable. So that's, God controls our effort, or other people. God, ultimately, it's not up to us. And therefore, we say, Lepum Sara Agra, you ameli mim haTorah. You get a lot of reward for your efforts. And what we say, a guy who's brilliant, and he doesn't put in much effort, and he knows 50 times as much as the guy who struggles much harder. From a religious point of view, the guy who struggles is much better. But that's not the way we work. And I mentioned this, I think, also, in an ideal world, at least in Talmud and Tanakh and Torah Shebaal Peh and all those subjects, the mark in school, I won't say 100%, should be 80% effort and 20% result, because it's effort. Yes, in math and science, math and science has to be result. It's too bad. You want to be a doctor, it's very nice. But if you're not bright enough to get into medical school, I don't want you as a doctor. So there's a fundamental difference. So that's what he said. Now, I just want to say it's true. It's effort that counts, but it's not that results don't matter. Efforts, Mark, in other words, our efforts have to be to get results. In other words, just to sit and, let's say, learning or observing mitzvot just for putting effort, that's not very good. The effort has to be directed towards result. It's just if the result fails, okay, and you put in your best effort, that's okay. It's not that the mission is saying results don't matter. Results matter in the Torah world too. You're running a school, you want to make sure kids learn a lot and whatever. You have enough money to do all the programs you want, etc., etc. You have to test people. Are they learning? I think one of the great failings of much of the yeshiva world is they don't give any test. We're talking about this. It's ridiculous. And we know in the real world, and unless if you're the Chazon Ish or you're Rav Soloveitchik, you don't need a test. But most, even great people, they need tests to motivate them. If I didn't have tests for Smicha and this, I wouldn't have reviewed your day as much, because that's the nature of the world. You have to review and go over it. So results are very important. It's not that the Mishnah is saying in the world of Torah results don't count. Results count. Just if your efforts, you have to think strategically. You have to get good planners, and you have to think, what do we want to get? What is the outcome? And then put in our best efforts. Then we're only rewarded for the effort, even if we fail. But if we don't have that outcome, we don't have the results we want, then your efforts are kind of silly. Then we're going to judge you based on your failures, not on your efforts. Okay, so that's main point of the Mishnah. Just a little point. The Mishnah says, if you do this, then you get a great reward. I just find interesting. We'll come back to this. The Mishnah doesn't say there's a great punishment for not putting in effort, because remember the Mishnah began in Batalta B'Torah. If you don't learn, you nullify Torah, whether that's in learning Torah or in observing Torah. Yesh lecha b'teilim harbe. Lots of people are like you. That's lots of people like that. So no, that's normal. It's normal. Most people are not interested in working so hard for the community, and most people put in a little effort. They don't want to, for things they really, really care about. But for the world, for other people, the community, no. So that's okay. So I mean, that's the normal. So the Mishnah's not going to say we're going to punish everybody. No, the Mishnah says if you do it, we're going to give you a great reward. And that's just, I find that important to point out. It's sort of the overall Jewish theme that the rewards are much greater than punishments. I guess the best place is by the Yud Gimel Midot and the Seret Hadibrot. God is an El Kana. God is a zealous or jealous. How do you translate Kana? He's Kana, he's jealous or zealous with Z, as the Canadians. I know I said, Z last time, and Zev got upset at me so a zealous God or a jealous God, and he takes out his anger for 3 or 4 generations. So we're not going to now discuss the philosophical problem. How can God punish the sons for the sins of the parents? But that's a separate and important issue. But it's only for 3 or 4 generations. No chesed la'alafim. But God does. Does the chesed Hashem arachum v'chanun for thousands of generations. In other words, we have this concept of schut avot. The Gemara says maybe it doesn't apply anymore, but whatever. We get the merit. What the Mishnah says, schut avotam, the merit of Abraham is helping us. So that's one thing. As a matter of fact, we say every time the custom when you go to a live shir in Pirkei Avot. So how does the person giving the shir always end the shir at the end of a Pirkei Avot shir? That's not only Pirkei Avot, but especially in Pirkei Avot. How does the rabbi or whoever's giving the shir end the shir? Rabbi Chananya ben Akasha Omer Ratzah Kadosh Baruch Hu L'Zachor D'Yitzriel Pichal Kiver Them Torah Mitzvot Shenemar Hashem Chafetz Mansi Ko Yigdil Torah Batir. And then a Rabbana Kaddish, right? God wanted to give great merit. Hashem Chafetz Mansi Ko Yigdil Torah Batir. He made Torah more and dear because he wanted to help us. What does it mean? God gave us opportunity to do mitzvot, things that are normal. That we don't need God's command to tell us to not to take revenge. I mean, maybe people do, but you shouldn't need God's command to honor your parents. There are many, many things it's easy to get a mitzvah. I said, while this is not necessarily one of the 613 mitzvot, to say good morning, that's a mitzvah. It probably is a Torah mitzvah. It's a fulfillment of v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Love your neighbor as yourself. And when they say good morning, when you smile at somebody, we've mentioned the Gemara says that was the greatness of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. He knew this, he knew that, and then he knew everything. He knew Kol Torah Kula inside out. The Gemara says nu, and but nobody ever said hello to him first in the morning. Right? We mentioned last year the story, when Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky moved to Monsey. I always like to quote this story. So if it's review, also good. So when he moved to Monsey in his later years, so apparently he lived near a convent, right? Where nuns live. And he used to pass them on the street, go for walks in the morning. So Rav Yaakov would always say good morning to the nuns, dressed in their Catholic garb, and I don't have to tell you what many people think of Catholicism, from a religious point of view. And Rav Yaakov was very friendly. And they say after he died, they have the story, the nuns came to pay, I don't know if they came to pay a Shiva visit or whatever. They said, he was the only person who said hello to us, good morning. Like all the very frum yeshiva guys, they're not going to say hello to a nun. And Rabbi Yaakov says hello to a nun. So that was the greatness of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Lo ikdimu adam shalom. Nobody said first, afilu nochri shabashuk. Even the idolater in the marketplace, he always said hello. So that's a great mitzvah. So it's easy. God give us lots of opportunities to do mitzvot, to get reward. That's what we do. And then, I'll just, the last part here, the Mishnah in Makot, in Masechet Makot, so Sanhedrin and Makot really go together. Sanhedrin is the running of the judicial system. Makot is, it's funny, I don't know why, like many high schools, many junior highs, when they teach Talmud, they teach Makot. Did anybody have that experience? Ketzad Eidim Nasim, even in chat, and even in Shabbat, but they also teach makot in grade 10. That's whatever they teach makot. Makot is, lashing people when they do something wrong, like they do today in Singapore or Hong Kong. Like if we did a makot today, the UN, would say it's human rights abuses. Maybe it is from our perspective, and maybe that's why the rabbis didn't like to do these things, and whatever it is, the whole. But makot is not it's not a nice thing to do. It's not a nice thing to do. Okay, just like the death penalty isn't so nice. So the Torah has it on the books, but it doesn't mean it was carried out. But anyway, so in the end of Masechet Makot, so there the Mishnah lists off the Rambam quotes 207 of the 365 negative commandments in Torah, 207 of them in theory, not in practice. In theory, you're liable to get lashes if you violated the sin. The other 158, you don't get for various reasons. There's no makot on those things. So the Gemara there quotes the mitzvah, lo tochlu al adam. It says in the Torah, rach chazak, be very, very strong, be really strong and don't eat blood. I don't know. And I don't know about you, but I don't have a desire to eat blood, not like a burning desire of mine. So that's what the Mishnah says. No, look at the Torah. Rachazak, be really strong. We're going to give you a great reward if you don't eat blood. So the Mishnah comments, this is already in the Mishnah, the text of the Mishnah. Wow, ma dam shenafsho shaladam katzalav. But people, disgusting. Ugh, they're going to take a glass of blood. Disgusting. And yet the Torah says be really strong because we're going to give you a great reward for not eating blood. So gezav arayot, the things people like to do, money theft, and sexual improprieties, the things that people get pleasure out of, enjoy that. So imagine the reward for that. So that's always it's always good to keep in mind. The Torah is not always easy. It has a very high bar, the ideals, but the Torah knows we're not, we don't live up to the ideals. Ein tzaddik bar t'asher yachta. You've got a lot of betelim b'Torah. We're going to focus on the reward, not on the punishment. Okay, let's move on to Mishnah Yod Aleph. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer ha'osem mitzvah achad konelo praklit achad. So Eve, we were just talking about traveling. So the last Torah in motion trip I did was to Greece. After our Morocco trip, I went to that summer. I actually went on 2 of the trips. I went to Greece. So when you go to Greece, it's really, I commented, if anybody read any of the articles, those are the most popular articles I write is when I go on the trips and I write my thoughts from the trips. But I'm really convinced how Chazal saw the beauty of Greece. That when the rabbis say, whoever hasn't seen the Beit HaMikdash in its glory has never seen a beautiful building in its world. And I'm convinced the rabbis were thinking of Greece, the Acropolis. They were thinking of the beauty of Greece. And they were telling the people, yes, there's physical, tremendous beauty in Greece. It really is a beautiful country. But the beauty of our thing is because our beauty is not only physical, although that's important too. The gold, the temple, we do believe in making this aesthetically beautiful. It's beautiful. It's clear there's the tension, and Greece is very close to Israel. It's very close to Israel. Geographically, it's like the closest place in Europe, Israel. And anyways, there's tremendous Greek influence, and the apikomen, Sanhedrin, 2 of the famous words that are from Greek words. So in our Mishnah, a praklit and a katigor, those are Greek words. And there is tremendous, not to mention, of course, the Rambam, the Greek influence on the Rambam. Yeah, throughout politica, that also appears in the Mishnah, also something along those lines. Also, of course, a Greek word. Greek set the Western thought is based in Greece, and Plato, Aristotle, all of Western thought and democracy and logic and many of the beautiful things that we like in the Western world initiated in Greece. And the rabbis were quite appreciative, but they were also worried about it. The Olympics are Greeks, right? And that's the worship of the body. And that's why the Greeks banished, Brit Milah. Because when in the Hanukkah story, because Brit Milah is mutilation of the body, and the Greeks believed in the perfection of the body. Okay, whatever. So we have our tension with Greece, but we recognize the beauties. I just pointed out as an aside. But here you have Haosem mitzvah achad, konelo praklit achad. If you do one mitzvah, you acquire koneh, you buy, you acquire a praklit. So a praklit is like a defender. And we know ein katigor ve'oseh aveirach ad one sin naselo katigor. We say en katigor nase sanigor. The prosecutor can't become a defendant. The katigor. That's why the Kohen Gadol wasn't allowed to wear any gold. When he went in on Yom Kippur to do the special Yom Kippur service, normally the Kohen Gadol has 8 pieces of clothing, 4 of linen, white, plain, which every Kohen wore, and then 4 extra made of gold, because aesthetics are important. So he had a gold and tchelet vargaman, beautiful blue threads and fancy threads. It had to look beautiful, but he couldn't do that on Yom Kippur, because the Yom Kippur, the origins of Yom Kippur are the sin of the golden calf, the Chet HaEgel, and Egel HaZahav. So therefore, the prosecutor, the reason we need to do repentance on Yom Kippur is because of the prosecuting of the gold. So we can't use gold as our defendant. Kind of interesting, because that kind of often conflicts, that the way we turn something around, we take that aver and turn it into a mitzvah, but that we'll have to leave for another time. So the Mishnah says, when you do one mitzvah, you acquire a defendant. I don't know, where do you acquire them? In heaven, apparently. And if you do one averah, you acquire a prosecutor. Okay, maybe it means, it's in your background and it'll come out against you. What the Mishnah is saying, is what you do has results even if you don't notice them. That when you do something, it has impacts, and sometimes on you, sometimes in future generations. And then the Mishnah thing, tshuva masim tovim kitris b'fnei hapornot. So the Mishnah says, so tshuva, repentance, and good deeds, Ketris, that's also, I believe, a Greece word, right? In Israel, the trisim are the, what's the word? On the windows, the covering of the window. They don't have them. Nobody's brought, how come nobody bought trisim to North America in business? No, can you get them in North America? You know what I'm talking about. In Israel, it blocks out the sunlight 100%. Our curtains never block out sunlight 100%. They're not made that way in North America, but in Israel, the trisim. Anyways, a tris is a cover, a protective cover. So tshuva masim tovim, repentance. In other words, we're always going to sin. That's what we just said. Betelim harpe. Of course, we're going to sin. Osem mitzvah mentioned, and leaders are going to sin too. We were talking about leaders acting l'shem shemaim, right? Asher nasi yachta. That's a pasuk in Parshat Vayikra. So normally it says if you sin, and by the nasi, the leader of the Jewish people, says asher, when he sins. And Rashi quotes Ashrei. Blessed is a generation where the leader sins. And he can admit a sin. A leader who doesn't sin is no leader, because it means he's not making any decisions. A leader never makes a mistake. That's not a leader, because it means he's doing nothing. I don't want a leader who doesn't do anything because he's afraid to make a mistake. I want a leader who's bold and is going to get it right 80% of the time, or 60% of the time. That's fine. But of course, you're ashrei, blessed, asher, it's inevitable. And we're blessed when the leader sins and then he's willing to admit his sin. That's in context of bringing a korban chatat, a sin offering. So the asher nasi yachta. So of course, we're all going to sin. But the response to sin is tshuva and masim tovim. Now, tshuva and masim tovim, it's interesting. Isn't tshuva also masim tovim? Of course, tshuva is probably more the intellectual, the acceptance, and the good deeds. Just very briefly, I don't know why this popped into my head when I was learning the Mishnah, but that's the way it goes. And it reminded me of an essay Rav Soloveitchik has in Ala Tshuva. Ala Tshuva is probably my first real introduction to Rabbi Soloveitchik. Ala Tshuva was, we know, for many years. Rav Soloveitchik gave 2 famous public drashot a year on Gimel Shvat, his father's yahrzeit, and and then during Aseret Yemei Tshuva, and literally thousands of people would go, and literally he would speak for 4 to 5 hours without a break, and he would actually stop, and people would go, no, 2 hours halacha, 2 hours agada. So we know Pinchas Peli was a professor at University of the Negev, I think, and in Beersheba, I spent a couple years at YU, and he became close to Rav Soloveitchik, and he wrote out the drasha were given in Yiddish, and he wrote Ala Tshuva. And when I came to yeshiva at Hakotel in 1979, so Elulzman, so I learned Ala Tshuva. I read the book. That was my first real introduction to Rabbi Soloveitchik. It's a phenomenal book, phenomenal. And it's, of course, it's not the same as having been there, but just reading it. It's now in English on repentance. At the time, it was just in Hebrew. I'll let you. So in that essay, he, of course, he always starts a problem in the Rambam and contradiction in the Rambam. Does tshuva begin? The process of tshuva. So normally we think the process of tshuva, we have to be sorry for what we did. We have to admit it and resolve for the future. That's in Perek Aleph in the Rambam. In Perek Beit, the Rambam, if you'll read carefully, you'll notice the Rambam says what's tshuva is you start doing wonderful things for the future, and then you're sorry for what you did in the past. In other words, the future is first. It's not first we're sorry and we resolve for the future. First we do, and then after we do mitzvot, after we do tshuva, we're sorry for what we did. And the Rav said there are two types of tshuva. There's some people are motivated to do tshuva. They're just not happy in their life. They're caught up in a life that's just not meaningful. That's sort of, there's something wrong. They admit something wrong, and then they look, and then they have to come to something forward. And that's one type of tshuva. And sometimes tshuva is the reverse. No, they're very happy. Then they get invited to a Shabbos Milah. When I was younger, I always used to say the two best ways to make somebody more interested in observant Judaism is to invite them. Everybody knows this one, of course. Invite them to a Friday night meal. Of course, see the beauty of Shabbat, and also say, he's young and we would be wild in weddings. You'd invite them to an Orthodox wedding. You see the dancing. I know it's the joy you see at a wedding. Sometimes someone is not observant. There's no mixed dancing at the wedding. They can't understand the wedding dancing. The men together, the women together. That's sort of weird. But then they see it. I've experienced this many times. Non-observant people, they sort of stare in amazement at some of the things they do. Maybe today they're more popular across the board with social media. They're more known. But whatever the case, so so that person, he's very happy. He's not upset. He likes his cheeseburgers. He doesn't, his way of life. He's living with his girlfriend. No problem. But he sees the beauty of something, and then as he gets more involved and he starts to study and learn more, says, maybe what I'm doing isn't so right. In other words, the tshuva doesn't begin with upset at the past. It begins with the beauty of the future, and then you move backwards. So those are the two types. Soloveitchik wrote this whole beautiful essay on these two types of tshuva: a tshuva rooted in the past and a tshuva rooted, so to speak, in the future. So, like I said, I don't know why. It's Tammuz. We have to do tshuva. The 3 weeks are coming up, and any day of the year you can make an excuse why you have to do tshuva. It's not an excuse. So sometimes it's tshuva and masim tovim. Sometimes the order is the tshuva leads you to masim tovim. I'm upset, and then I do masim tovim. But sometimes I would say it's masim tovim leads you to do tshuva. You do things good, and then you say, what I'm doing isn't so right. You start examining the path. That's just interesting. And of course, the idea that everybody is different and everybody comes to things differently. We're talking about Avraham Avinu before. The Torah tells us nothing about Abraham's first 75 years. I mean, I guess they told him Terach took him to Israel before he was on the way to Israel. So I don't know how old he was when Terach started going. It's a whole interesting parsha. Why did the Torah tell us? It's Terach who's the first Zionist. It's Terach who starts going. It's stuck in the middle for reasons we don't know, and then God tells him to complete the journey your father started. But he's 75 years old. We know nothing. Why does the Torah tell us nothing? Because had the Torah told us something about Avraham, every Jew would say, how did Avraham become religious? He did this, he did that. So I'm going to follow Avraham. And the Torah doesn't want you to do that. Torah wants everybody to pick their own path to God. What worked for Abraham may be a disaster for you. What worked for, that's what we say, the famous thing, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov. Each one has their own approach to God. Everybody don't. And the Torah tells us very little about Moshe's or life. Matter of fact, Torah tells us very little about anybody's biographical information. The Torah doesn't really give biographical information. Torah gives only moral information. So sometimes the moral information is portrayed through biographical or through stories of the people. But Torah doesn't really tell us, he moved here. Like when the Torah says that Yitzchak moved to Gerar, the Torah is not interested in giving us historical information. Torah, as Rav Shimshon Rav Hirsch says, who cares that Yitzchak moved to Gerar? Torah doesn't care about these things. Torah doesn't tell us this. So Rav Shimshon Rav Hirsch explained, Gerar, he didn't want Yitzchak. I'm sorry, Abraham moved to Gerar. Yitzchak went to Gerar later on. Why did Abraham move to Gerar? So if you look in the Torah, he moved to Gerar right after God promised him that have a kid, or it's when, I forget already now, but it's when Yitzchak either wasn't born yet or was a young kid, I think. And Shishon Raphael Hirsch says, he didn't want Yitzchak to grow up in a hick town. Jews have to make a mark in the world. You make a mark in the world, be exposed to Greece. We explained this in our shir before Pesach. We became a great nation in Egypt. You know why? Because Egypt was the greatest nation. Yeah, the greatest nation can be immoral and decadent and awful and evil, but it was also great. I mean, archaeology and science and pyramids, beautiful. And the Torah wants us to see the beauty of it. Torah wants us to see the beauty of Greece. Growing up in a hick town, so some people grow up in Hicktown and they become, but it doesn't work that way. They don't have the exposure. They don't have the opportunities. That's just the way. Again, that's the way the world is, for better or for worse. You may not like it, but obviously you don't have the same opportunities growing up in the middle of nowhere than you growing up in Boston with all the universities, within walking distance of you, Harvard, MIT, you live or in Yerushalayim with all the opportunities for learning. That's why living in a neighborhood is so important. So Avraham moved to Gerar because he didn't want Yitzchak growing up in a hick town. So that's very important. It's not biographical information, it's moral information. So the Torah doesn't tell us how did Abraham do tshuva, how did he change, because everybody has to find their own path. What the Torah tells us is things that's relevant for us to know. Okay, I hope that makes sense. All right. Okay, let's continue. Now this is very interesting, and I had to think maybe you'll have a better answer than I do. I think the Mishnah continues, and if you're following in the Mishnah Yud Aleph, you'll notice this is not a new Mishnah. If I was editing the Mishnah, this would now be Mishnah Yud Beit. But the editors of the Mishnah, and I don't even know exactly who divided the Mishnayot into Aleph Beit Gimel. So I imagine it was not Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. Although if I've been reading recently a phenomenal book. I don't know if many people have heard, who know who Avi Walfish is. Avram Walfish. He lives in Tekoa, I believe. So he's the world. If you know the Herzog method of Tanakh, what they do in Gush Etzion, the literary analysis, this new approach to Tanakh, that's very much in the modern Orthodox world. All the Maggid books on Tanakh pretty much follow this approach, literary analysis and stuff. So Avi Walfish is the pioneer of this field in the Mishnah. He wrote his PhD on the Mishnah Rosh Hashanah. And I'm reading now. I just got it. I just got in the mail a couple weeks ago. I'm on brachot, and I've learned Mishnah's brachot. I'm sure I've done Mishnah brachot 50 times in my life at least, because I learned it with all of my kids and I reviewed it. And it's the first Mishnah in Shas. I probably reviewed it, and every time I said I'm going to learn all of Shas. So you start at brachot. And yet the insights are unbelievable. The uses of words from Pirkei, it's really fascinating. It's really so, and one of the things he does, of course, is where does the Pirkei end and the Pirkei end, begin and end, because there's always going to be comparisons. We know every author, right, beginning and the ending. So clearly the Prakim were very much divided up at an early stage of the Mishnah development. I don't know when the individual Mishnayot were, probably maybe also at an early stage. Anyway, so you'll tell me, this second part of the Mishnah, which on the surface should be its own Mishnah. Rav Yochanan Hasander, first of all, it's a different sage. So usually, usually you're not going to have two sages saying two different things in the same Mishnah. You'll start a new Mishnah. Rav Yochanan, and sometimes, by the way, you have Hillel. We have that in the first paragraph. Hillel, the same sage, and yet they break it up into two Mishnayot. So you always have to ask yourself, why? Why didn't they put all of Hillel's teachings in one Mishnah? Hillel and Pirkei Aleph has 10 teachings. Everybody has 3. He has 10, but they put it in 3 Mishnayot. Why not put it in one Mishnah? And here you have 2 rabbis, 1 Mishnah. So the question is why? Rav Yochanan Hasander, Omer, Kol Knisiyah Lishem Shemayim. Any gathering that is for the purpose of heaven, was already in the last Mishnah, right? Yeah, Amalta. You have to, or not last Mishnah, what I said, Rabbi Chorsky, Osek l'shem Shemaim. Kol knisiyah sheli shem Shemaim sofali kayem. It's also hard to translate. We'll try to translate. Will in the end have a permanence or have a purpose or something. The sheina l'shem Shemaim, a gathering, b'nei Knesset, where we gather. Kol knisiyah sheina l'shem Shemaim ein sofali kayem. Will not in the end, will not have any permanence. So the question is, what is this doing in the same Mishnah? So I don't know if anybody has any ideas. So I thought, you can feel free to yell and speak and unmute yourself or write in. So I on the one level, I thought that the best form of tshuva and masim tovim is when people gather all together. I don't know, it sounds a little like corny, but homiletic, but tshuva and masim tovim, that's where we ended before. Tshuva, masim, tovim, they are the shields against any punishment. And then what's the best way to do tshuva and masim tovim? If you gather together, if people come together. Now, if you want to talk about the Mishnah, I wrote about it this week, the Mishnah was written in response to the destruction of the temple. That's why the Mishnah was written down, would not have been written down. The exile of the Jewish people, that's the historical reason the Mishnah was written, because they could no longer have an oral type of a tradition. So if you want to go there and say sinat chinam, we lost the temple because we didn't get along, so we're contrasting that to knisya l'shem shemaim. But I don't know that this is a great explanation why it's doing in the same Mishnah. But anyways, that's what the Mishnah says. When we gather together for Shem Shemaim, so falahi kayem, it will have permanence. So the Tiferet Yisrael makes a fascinating comment. I think it's obvious, but not everybody agrees with this. Tshuva masim, I'm sorry, a knisya l'shem shemayim can be about secular matters, and a knisya shelo l'shem shemayim can be on Torah matters. In other words, the shem shemayim doesn't mean are you working about a yeshiva curriculum or raising tzedakah or helping Israel. It also means that a knisya l'shem shemayim could be about biology, and it could be about all kinds of things that are building a condo development, people coming together to discuss, people sharing an apartment. It has nothing to do with Torah matters. It's the gathering of together, because that's also part of life. In other words, that's how the Tiferet Yisrael points out. You can have a knisya l'shem shemayim. L'shem shemayim doesn't mean Torah. L'shem shemayim means for pure motives, you want to do good. You want something good come out of it in the business too. You have a business meeting together. That can be l'shem shemayim. It's also a mitzvah. I mean, we know indirectly all this stuff is a mitzvah also, but so that's very beautiful. And then on the other hand, people can gather together for Torah purposes, and they're not l'shem shemayim. I don't have to give you 50,000 examples that we can all think of. People claim, they're doing it l'shem shemayim, this and that's, it's some mitzvah activity, but everybody really has their own personal motives, and they're not really interested in helping others. I mean, politicians, what can I tell you? Unfortunately, I've been quoting this a lot recently. My kids know it bal peh, politics is kulo sheker. I've quoted it before. That was from Rav Soloveitchik's. Rav Soloveitchik, I don't know, I didn't hear it. I heard it Rav Schachter often quoted Rav Soloveitchik. I never heard Rav Soloveitchik say it. I didn't hear Rav Soloveitchik speak so often, but very, very few times. But Rav Schachter would always quote, it's kulo sheker. It is, we see, it's kulo sheker. But so they asked, why don't they call it sheker? To have a little bit of emet in it if they called it sheker. But and that's why Torah and politics don't really mix. It's the nature of politics. I don't know. Maybe that's the way it has to be. I don't know. I don't know what to say. But it's very bad. Having Torah and the political system creates a chilul Hashem. I'll say that. If you disagree with me, feel free to disagree later. We can talk about it. But I think I think we should keep religious parties out of politics as much as we could. Be much better if we could. That's my personal opinion. Feel free to disagree. Anyways, so but so you can have things that are being done. That's what the Tiferet Yisrael says. You can gather for the purpose of Torah activities, but it may not be l'shem shemayim. I think it's such a beautiful explanation. I mean, to me, it's obvious, but it's really beautiful the way he points it out. Secular activities can be l'shem shemayim, and religious activities can be shelo l'shem shemayim. Debbie, I see you asked who is the author of Tiferet Yisrael. Tiferet Yisrael, Yisrael Lifshitz. Rabbi Yisrael Lifshitz, he died around 1855. Lived, I forget now where he was a rabbi, I forget. But as you know, I quote him all the time. I very much love his commentary. It's quoted at the bottom to Yisrael. He was clearly aware many modern trends, and he's living really the beginning of the modern period. He's in the mid 19th century, and the classical, what I have here, the Yafi Noboa's Mishnah. Today people learn with a Kahati, but the classical has the Bartanura on one side. Bartanura, Italy, Bartanura. He moved to Israel in the 16th century or so, the Bartanura. And Tosat Yontiv is also 16th century. Rav Yontiv Littman Heller, Hellers today, lots of descendants. He was a rabbi in Prague after the Maharal. And so that's here. And then the bottom is the Tiferet Yisrael. This is the class. Then it's on the side and the Rambam in the back. Matter of fact, I'm in the middle of reading an article now. I don't know who wrote it. I found it online about when the Mishnah became a subject of independent study. And it was in the 16th century, which is why you have the partner. Only the Rambam. The Rambam was the first person in history, in other words, to accord the Mishnah separate status. In other words, if you look at Rashi, what does Rashi said? It's something in the Mishnah. The Gemara will explain. In other words, until the Rambam, the only interpretation of the Mishnah was the Gemara. The Gemara was what any commentary in the Mishnah. That's what the Gemara is. The Gemara's commentary in the Mishnah. And the Rambam is the first one who wrote an independent commentary in the Mishnah, like divorced from the Talmud. Oh. But as was pointed out in this article, the Rambam's commentary never wasn't as popular as the Mishnah Torah. Who studies the Parish Mishnah? The Rambam. Everybody learns the Mishnah Torah. And then Mishnah went into hiatus for 500 years. Or 400 years, whatever, and it only picks up in the 16th century. And he says it picked up in Sfat, the Mekubalim, Rav Yosef Karo, the Ari, and that whole crew. And okay, I'm in the middle of reading it, 80 page long, I'm about halfway through, reading, that's when the Mishnah gets picked up as an independent subject. When I was in Orchaim, when I went to high school in Toronto, we used to do 2.5 hours a day of Gemara, from 8:40 to 11:10, and then we had 2 periods of 45 minutes each of other Jewish studies, Tanakh, whatever, Historia, Safrut, 2 periods a day, and then we had lunch. And we had 4 times a week we learned Mishnah. Today, I don't know any yeshiva that does that. In other words, we learned Gemara for 2.5 hours, then we learned Mishnah. We did all of Seder and Ezekiel, and we did a few stars. Rabbi Meir Berglas, if any of you know the name, who founded Midrash Moriah, he was rabbi in Toronto back then. I'm talking in the late 70s. And he was my mission teacher for all 4 years. And then he made Aliyah. The year I guess we graduated, so we had to go to Israel. We went to Israel, whatever. So he taught us Mishnah. But Mishnah as an independent subject is really new. So that's probably why the Tosot Yontif and the Bartanura are both living at the same time. And now the Vilna Gaon is very into it. But there is a cute story. They say that once in Yeshivat Har Etzion, because often the interpretation, anybody who learns enough Gemara knows that sometimes the Gemara's interpretation of the Mishnah are, to put it mildly, are forced. It's clearly not. In other words, the Gemara has a problem because there's a contradictory Mishnah. So instead of saying that the 2 Mishnahs contradict, the Gemara will come up with a resolution that the Mishnah is talking about this case. And anybody reads it, no, it can't be that way. It really can't. And that we have to talk about at another time. I don't want to get too far afield. But so the story goes that once in Yeshiva Har Etzion, people said, we want to learn the Mishnah different from how the Gemara learns. And we're going to learn, that's not what the goal of the partner was, but they wasn't to divorce it against the Talmud. It was just, we can learn it independently from the Talmud. They say, no, we want to interpret the Mishnah, not necessarily how the Talmud interprets the Mishnah. So apparently, Rabbi Amital said, you see that hill over there? Go set up your own yeshiva. In this yeshiva, we take the Gemara as the field. Anyways, okay, back here. Sorry, but that's what the Tiferet Yisrael said. You have a Knesiyah l'shem Shemayim. The Shem Shemayim can be in any matter of life, and sometimes Torah is not the Shem Shemayim. It's a sad and true comment. Now, the Melechet Shlomo, that's Rav Shlomo Adani, who's also from the tail end of Tzfat. That same kind of generation. So he's printed in the back of the, there are people printed on the side of the page, and then the Rif and the Rosh are printed in the back of the Talmud. Get in the back of the Talmud is still pretty good. You got to be pretty good to make it to the back page. Then you have people who don't make it anywhere. They have to write their own books. The books are on the side. But so the Melechet Shlomo makes it into the back of the Gemara. So he quotes. Again, he doesn't explain, but I assume he was equating l'shem shemaim to Torah. How can you have l'shem shemaim in business? So he said the gear says l'shem mitzvah. Kol knisya, not l'shem shemaim. Any gathering that comes for the purpose of a mitzvah will have kiyum and not. But I much prefer the classic way our Mishnayot read, that is the knisya l'shem shemaim, and l'shem shemaim and mitzvot are not necessarily one and the same thing. Okay, it's just let me finish the kiyum and then I'll see if there are any questions. So what do you mean sofa li kayem? It's always a hard word, and we're going to have, of course, in the fifth parak, kol machloket shi l'shem shemaim sofa li kayem. That's the more famous. That's last week. Korach va'adato, right? Hillel and Shammai, Korach va'adato. Kol machloket shem shemaim. So that is really building on this Mishnah. This Mishnah says we gather together. The assumption is we're gathering together for the similar purpose. We want to build a condo building that's good for everybody. We want to build a school that's good for everybody. So the goal is the same, and we're gathering to work out what's the best way. But then the mission, the fifth parak says you can go a step further. You can have a machloket l'shem shemaim. I gather together. We disagree. We're going to gather together to hash out our disagreement. But the goal of coming together is to reach a positive conclusion, to reach peace. So that also can be l'shem shemaim. L'shem shemaim doesn't mean everybody agrees, right? Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai don't agree, but we consider that, well, Hillel and Shammai anyways, we consider that machloket l'shem shemaim. So here the Mishnah says any gathering, which seems to be sort of, they have the same purpose. And then later on, we develop into a machloket l'shem shemaim, even when they don't agree. So the question is, what exactly does it mean will be kiyum? It's a hard thing. We'll have permanence. Lekayem. They translate. So something good will come out of it. So falihi kayem. So I thought perhaps this is maybe it ties into the first half of the Mishnah. I wonder why it's connected. So falihi means there'll be something of permanent value, even though we may not know what it is. Remember, the Mishnah began. The same Mishnah. If you do a good deed, you acquire some kind of, I don't know, angel, some kind of guardian, and help you. In other words, something is going on that you don't know about. You do action today. You don't have to believe in God. You can be an atheist like this to believe this. You do an action today, and the results can reverberate around the world much, much later. So sofali kaye means something will come out of it, just like the praklit achad, or like something positive will come out of it. We all know that. We you don't know the effect. Anybody who's a teacher knows this especially so. One of the, I don't say a frustration of teaching, but you don't really know the impact you have on somebody. Often you never know, and often you don't know for years. I mean, you can know a little bit during the year, but really the teacher's impact, it wants to impact the person's thinking for the rest of their life. You don't go to become a teacher because you want to give them a 95 in Talmud. You want to influence them, right? So you want to influence, and you want to make them think. You want to develop their critical thinking skills. You want to do all kinds of wonderful things. So the kiyum can be, meaning it will have endurance. Lekaye means endurance, even well after you, like planting a tree. So that could also be, even if we don't know what it means. I thought also it can mean Knesiyah l'shem Shammai means Sofali Kei means the friendship can remain. When people come together, how many people, they meet, how did you meet? They met them on some committee, and then they become lifelong friends. The issue of the committee hasn't been important for 25 years. Nobody thought about that issue. They never even resolved the issue. But people, there was a kiyum. The fact that you came together, even though the issue you came together may have never been resolved, may have been never discussed, can lead to other factors. Everybody knows that. That's how people make what we call connections. That's how you make being, coming together, all kinds of purposes. Okay, so that's what the Mishnah says here. Okay, since it's 10:25 already, so maybe I won't start with the next Mishnah. We'll start that next week of Elazar ben Shamua. But just to quickly review what we learned, and then I'll take any questions. Amelut, effort in Torah, what counts is not the results. You have to have a plan for the results. It's not the results don't count. Results do matter, but we understand that we don't control the results. Well, we can only do the best we can. So our reward is based on how much effort. Im amelim b'Torah, right? That's Rashi. I didn't say that before. Right? And the Torah, all the blessings of the Torah, Rashi said to you, amelim. The Torah, the true reward, if you walk in my statutes, it'll be wonderful. You get all these rewards. That's amelut. And you know what? Often you're not successful. Avram Avinu 1 out of 8. Yeah, 1 out of 8 it changed the whole world. But at the time, I don't know, 7 out of 8. You're not so thrilled. Like Avram didn't know what was going to happen, but he questioned God. But my here, right? Avram wasn't like whatever God said, right? All are Avot. God comes to Yaakov. He promises he's going to protect him, and Yaakov says, "If God protects me, I'll do this." What do you mean, if God protects you? And the rabbis say, God promised, but maybe I sin. Maybe I'm not worthy. It's a beautiful, scary, powerful idea. We never know. They don't know what's going to be. We can, even if God gives you a promise. Our Avot weren't so, you can't just rely on God. Even if God gives you a promise. I started this year with saying, we don't rely on God. Ain't some female and we got to do effort. Even when God came to them and told them it'll be good, Avram said, how will I know? So certain opinions were very critical of Avram Avinu for saying that, but whatever, he said it because not sure. So, but our church is Amelim, and that's what Rabbi Twersky's explanation of coming, the tzibur, we talked about how reward is always much greater than punishment, and the opportunities for reward are all over the place. Don't drink blood, and then there again, what the Mishnah says again, I didn't say it in the first time. You always learn more in review than the first time. So is that by shebi al tasa, when you do nothing, you get. In other words, I don't drink blood. So what did I do? I didn't do anything. Correct. By sitting, what's the great, if a rabbi gives a long speech, so nobody can talk Lashon Hara in shul for 20 minutes, so there's something to be said. The reward for sitting there and this, you're not paying attention. I don't know, the rabbis can't speak 20 minutes anymore. COVID got rid of that, I think. We come back, we'll see what happens. I don't know, the shuls that are back in New York, can somebody tell me, are the rabbis speaking as long as they used to speak before? Here we don't have no normal shul yet, so I don't know what's going on, but somebody wants to tell me what the shuls are. I hear all the kiddushes are back. That has to come back. Okay. Anyway, so we can get a reward for doing nothing, the act of doing nothing. And then so that's the influence of Greece and doing tshuva, that our actions create impact that we don't always see. And there's two types of tshuva: the tshuva rooted in the past, you're unhappy, and the tshuva that starts a great future, and then you're sorry about the past. And then the notion of the importance of gathering together, l'shem shamayim, doesn't matter for what purpose, as long as it's done for a positive purpose. Okay, we can stop here. Let's see. I think there are a few questions. Let me take a look. Okay, if one is engaged in the business work but are honest. Oh yeah, what are on? We picked up on that last week. Honest, isn't that better than very lackadaisical Torah student? Yes, we will pick that up next week. About on the importance of honesty and the connection between honesty and faith, and nasata v'natata be'emunah, which is a very strange language. That first question, that famous phrase, where your business dealings done, they translate in English honesty, but that's not what it means. It means the word emunah means faith in God, where your business is. So we'll pick up on that theme next week. But yes, being observant, honest businessman is better than a lackadaisical approach to study Torah. So you should, very few people, everybody should get a basic Torah education. Everybody has to get it. But once you're beyond the basics, and what the Gemara considered basic was very basic. We know, look at the Gemara, how little people knew. Most people, they knew how to read Hebrew. They knew, that's already, a high level. To get to the learning, that should be reserved for the elite of the elite. We discussed this many times. They should be getting paid 20 times as much money. A guy who learns in Kollel, meaning he's doing research for the future of the Jewish people. Like instead of working in a chemistry lab, he's working in a Torah lab. No, he's got 10 kids or whatever, 2 kids, doesn't matter. He isn't married, but he's great, fantastic talent. The Jewish people need him. So, okay, it's going to cost us $250,000 to get them. That's what we pay. How do we pay? Well, because only the elite of the elite can, and you can save a lot of money. Kick out 98%. How do you determine how to kick out? You have a test. That's results oriented. Yes, we do care about results. We're talking about things beyond the norm. Yes, how do we determine who's in the kollel? You give a test. Results matter. Yeah, in heaven, but in this world, when we want to apply Torah, there too results matter. So for everybody, of course, it's your effort. But for the elite of the elite, who do we determine the elite and pay them on the money, do research in Torah? That they amelim b'Torah. Amelim b'Torah means if you're learning in kollel, you should be learning 16, 17 hours a day. It's very, very hard to do. Okay, 15 hours a day. How much? What else are you doing? Well, what else are there to do? You should go to a Vati Hashkama Minyan. Get up. What's there to do? If that's your job, remember, if you're in business, so all the people learn Daf Yomi, learn at night. They're working in business 9-10 hours a day, and then they find 2 hours a day to learn. So the guy in Kollel is 9-10 hours a day in business, then he has to learn those 2 hours. But since he's in Kollel, he has to do more. So he's got to be learning 15-16 hours a day, sleeps for 6 hours, 7 hours, talks to his family for a couple hours a day, helps to do shopping, whatever, that goes garbage, whatever he does, but he should be learning. So otherwise, he doesn't belong in Kollel. So yes, iPad, your thing is very correct. Okay, what was the title of the book you referred to about the translation Mishnah? I'm not sure what you're referring to. You mean Avi Walfish's book? Is that what you're referring to, Nathan? Just let me know. The translation Mishnah. Yeah, so Avi Walfish, I mean, the book's only in Hebrew. Avi Walfish is an American, but most of his writings are in Hebrew. Yeah, it's whatever. So I don't know if you have to raise that. Okay, Virtue said it is easier to overcome bad habits by joining a group. Absolutely, very good, Zev. Yes, Alcoholics Anonymous, Gambling Anonymous, meaning if you have a problem, very good. I didn't think of that angle. By coming as a group together, then it's much easier to solve that problem. Excellent. Yes. Okay, we are a separation. There's separation between shul and politics. Yeah. That's who told me the joke? I won't mention. Somebody said I said as a joke, maybe it wasn't a joke, someone who was in the Knesset, somebody who was teaching at a university, and then they went to the Knesset. And they said the reason they moved is they couldn't stand the politics in the university, so they went to the Knesset instead. So that's I'm not sure if it was a joke or not, but you understand? Yes, unfortunately, the world of academia. This is an olam emet. This is an olam emet. By the way, Avi Walfish does have some articles in English. If you type in his name on Google, I think you'll get some of his articles. He has a couple articles printed in English. I know, actually, one of them, my first one, I'm pretty sure was printed in the Reform Journal, like the Reform Rabbinate has as a journal. And I think, actually, I believe HUC printed one of his articles on the Mishnah. The Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah, I think that's the Mishnah, the fight between Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua and making him break Yom Kippur and all that. But yeah, there's a lot to do. Okay, girls were taught Mishnah alone in YU High School. Yeah, so that's actually interesting that they, in other words, I assume they would teach Mishnah, but they refused to teach Gemara. So the truth of the matter, the boys aren't supposed to learn Gemara till they get to high school. The boys should Mishnah and Pirkei Avot. We'll get there hopefully in a year or two, please God. That the age of 5 to 10 is Tanakh and 10 to 15 is Mishnah. So, right, but that, listen, it's easier. Mishnah is a lot easier. Some people find it more boring because it doesn't have that deliberations, the questioning. You don't have Tosfot on the Mishnah. Like the Gemara is, intellectually more challenging and more questions. The Mishnah reads like a code book. It's not exactly, but almost like a law book. So it's a little bit more quote unquote dry. It for sure is more dry. But I'm a big believer in the Mishnah. I think, if you knew Mishnah well, the Gemara is 100 times easier. Anybody knows that because half the Gemara is quoting Mishnahs from other places, and it also gives you the background. Basically, if you learn Mishnah, you know the fundamentals of 100% of the Torah. You learn, actually, that's not 100% true. There's a famous question why tefillin is not mentioned in the Mishnah and mezuzah is not mentioned. Tefillin, mezuzah, and tzitzis. 3 of the most important mitzvot we have are nowhere to be found in the Mishnah. We'll have to leave that for another time. I have to leave you in suspense a little bit. You can think about that. Why tefillin, mezuzah, and tzitzis, those 3 crucial mitzvot sort of are not mentioned in the Mishnah. Hanukkah is also not mentioned in the Mishnah, but that's a whole other discussion. But there are things, but basically the Mishnah has it all. And then the Gemara, a lot of the Gemara is just back and forth, question, answer. So a lot of it is not practical, right? The Mishnah is much more practical, but again, it's the Yamelut. I mean, the standard way of learning Gemara did become much more important in Mishnah, but in history, things go back and forth. What Tanakh is having a revival today. Obviously, we've come back to the land of Israel. So Tanakh has a revival. Tanakh was a neglected field for many years. And people worked religiously why we should neglect it, based on a Rashi in Brachot, basically interprets a Gemara to mean don't teach your kids too much Tanakh. And that was taken seriously. And Rabbi Elia Meir Bloch's phenomenal letter. You have to read that letter. I have to find it for you. Elia Meir Bloch was the Rosh Yeshiva of Telz in Cleveland when his grandfather founded the yeshiva in Telz in Europe. Telz was a very progressive yeshiva in Europe. They had a mechina, they had levels. In Volozhin, there wasn't a level, just everybody was in. Telz they had levels of learning, and it's much more open. It was much more educationally, it was very much more in Europe. Then they came to Cleveland, and in 1956, Rabbi Elia Meir Bloch attended a Yom Ha'atzmaut celebration with the Mizrahi and the Aguda of Cleveland did a Yom Ha'atzmaut celebration. This could not happen in our world. And so he was heavily criticized. How dare he? It was Elazar Muskin's father. Those who know Elazar Muskin, rabbi of Young Israel in California, one of the large shuls, one of the most amazing shuls. He's really an amazing rabbi, was president of the RCA not long ago. So his father was a rabbi in Cleveland. So he was the head of the Mizrahi. And they had a joint program together. And Rabbi Elia Meir Bloch was heavily criticized. How dare the Aguda? In 1954 and 1956. I forget. It's been written up. And so Rabbi Bloch wrote a letter in response, and part of the letter was that, just because the Mizrahi does something doesn't mean it's wrong. Yes, we're members of the Aguda, but it's not everything they do is wrong. It's not like we're 100% and they're zero. And he said, there are 3 mitzvot that the religious community has neglected, and it's terrible. And the 3 mitzvot we've neglected are, anybody want to guess? Nobody wants to guess. It's okay. I won't tell. I won't give you a mark. I don't mark this. It's effort. Who cares what the result? So number 1 is the study of, I don't know what you already put them in, the study of Tanakh. We've neglected it. And number 2, speaking Hebrew. We don't teach in Hebrew anymore, Hebrew. And number 3, Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. We let the secular run Israel. This is in the 50s. He said, just because and it is related, just because the Maskilim study Tanakh and the Bible critics study Tanakh, so the Tanakh's for the reformers, not for us. So Rabbi Bloch wrote this letter. No, it's for us. It's our book. It is so. It's a very powerful, it's a beautiful letter. It's a point in history that we live in a different historical time period. What can I say? So anyways, but that's, how did I get into that whole thing? But yeah, Hebrew only anyways. Yeah. Of course, we're taught Mishnah, yeah, but okay, anyways. All right, any other questions here? It was Hebrew only, founded his Mishnah project in Trisha. Right, excellent. Thank you for pointing it out. Avi Wapish has a series of topics in the Mishnah on Trisha. That's right, it's on the Mishnah Rosh Hashanah, very interesting to listen to. Okay, with that, 2, 3 men. Thanks, us for some English articles, Poetics of the Mishnah. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we'll see you. Please, God, I want to wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom. Be well, and we'll, please, God, see you on Sunday morning, Rabbi Liebtag, 11:15, and of course, 12:15 on Monday morning. Alex Israel begins his series on Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, a 7-part series on his writings and thought. Pretty much each week, he's going to do an introduction first week, and then each week will be one of his books. He's going to sort of analyze one of his books. That's beginning on Monday. And then we have our regular classes. Mark Shapiro's finishing 51 weeks, a series on his book. You come if you missed the 51, because this is about what's not in the book. The letters he didn't include in the book. Why didn't he include certain letters in the book? This is the real censored stuff that we can get. And then he's going to be starting in next week, although he may go for 2 weeks, knowing Mark, sometimes what he thinks takes 1 week, takes 2. All of us know that. I do the same thing. So he will start on Shaul Lieberman, series on the life of thought and Shaul Lieberman, back to his great rabbinic thinker series that we've over the last 10 years, and then Rachel Sharansky Danziger on Tuesday, and Simi Peters on Wednesday. Shuli Mission's back on Thursday, and Rabbi Yossi Adler from Teaneck, from Renat, will be giving the Parsha Shir on Thursday. And just I'll announce it here first. I don't have the exact title and work, but please God, beginning Monday, June 28th at 11 a.m. before the Alex Israel class, Shira Mervis will be giving a series on Sephardic poskim, something like that. We had the interview with her last week. Shira just appointed the Rabbanit of Kehilat Tamar in Efrat. She's really, I find her so inspiring, and just talking to her excitement of Torah and her love of Torah is really so. I think after having her talk about sort of her life story, how she got appointed rabbi, I think it's important we learn actual Torah from the person, not just talk about how, she got appointed as the first woman, Orthodox, whatever you want to call it, Rabbanit. I don't know how many of you saw the news that London School of Jewish Studies just fired a woman because she got smicha to Yeshivat Maharat. She's been teaching there for 15 years, and they admit she's a wonderful teacher. She's great. But she said she won't use her title. She's happy not to use her title. But since she got smicha from me, it's been in the papers. You can look. I hate to share with you all the news like this, but I said many times, this is the issue of today that Orthodoxy is struggling with, is the role of women. That's the number one issue we're struggling with. And clearly this is the third rail. And for some people, women in the positions of Rabbanut is very threatening, because I don't have to. Anyways, this is after the shiur, so anybody's entitled, but once we're on topic. But please God, whatever, we can take the opportunity. Baruch Hashem, women can learn and women can teach, and we can learn from them, and we'll leave other people to debate these subjects, what they think. Okay, everybody, have a wonderful week. We look forward to seeing you next week many times, and all the best. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Zucker, yes, we cannot end. Mr. Zucker, I always look forward to your question at the end of
Thank you. You're talking about, I'm thinking aloud now, tshuva based on the past and tshuva based on the future. I'm not quite sure you said. It would seem to me that a rabbi who's involved in kiruv, he would have to use tshuva based on the future. Take these people he's dealing with to his home for Shabbos or to a wedding.
Right. Yeah, very interesting. That's not exactly what I was referring to, but correct. In other words, that's like Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach said that. In other words, if you want to do kiruv today, you have to you have to allow people to violate the laws of Torah. You cannot do kiruv today if you tell somebody that you can't drive on Shabbat to shul. Right, the failure of the conservative movement, unfortunately, was they said you're allowed to drive. What Esha Torah and Lubavitch and Or Samech and all these places do, they don't say you're allowed to drive. You're not allowed to drive. They just don't talk about it. Come to my house for Shabbos. I know you're going to drive, and you know you're going to drive, and I know that you know, and you know that I know. And but you know what? Without it, it can't work. So that's a broader picture. That's many people talk about this. So whether you have to extend an invitation for them to sleep, even if you know they won't accept it, or today maybe you don't even have to extend the invitation. You don't even have to bother, because they won't accept it. But of course, that's an understanding, because the goal is to create more Torah in the future, kind of like the Gemara says in a different context. It's not what the context, but there, Chalel alav Shabbat ha'achad kadei sheyikayim kavar harbe. One of the explanations on Pikuach Nefesh is violate one Shabbos so they can keep next Shabbos. We don't follow that opinion, because if that opinion would apply that a Jew who's not Shomer Shabbos, you couldn't violate Shabbos for them, because I'm saving them. They're not going to keep next Shabbos, and that's not true. That's not true. We do violate Shabbos and we base it on the pasuk of B'chai B'hem, should live and not die by them. But the Gemara does have that argument, and that argument carries weight on a certain level. So yes, I mean, still, and I even think in the Haredi Balei Tshuva movements, and they're ones most involved, they all rely on this. Maybe if you go ask a classical Haredi Rashiva, he'll tell you it's not allowed, I assume. Can't invite someone who's going to drive. But anybody who works in the kiruv movement knows that you can't have any hope of any kiruv if you don't allow people to drive on Shabbat. At least in America. Maybe in Israel it's different, but in America, North America for sure. So yes, that's a different way of looking at the future.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank God. All the best. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.